That I don't want to comment. Good morning, students. We were doing the story B. Wordsworth by V.S. Naipaul, and on the last turn, we came to know that this person, that is B. Wordsworth, asked the boy to keep his identity a secret and not to reveal about his relationship, and that he knows a person like B. Wordsworth to anyone, and not to tell anyone about his house, also about the mango tree, the coconut tree, and the plum tree which were growing in his garden, right? And the young boy, he agreed to keep his word. The narrator, he agreed to keep his identity, to keep B. Wordsworth's identity a secret. I gave him my word and I kept it. So the boy didn't tell about B. Wordsworth to anyone. I liked his little room. It had no more furniture than George's front room, right? George must be some person whom the narrator knew, right? So he could compare the furniture in B. Wordsworth room with the furniture in George's room. But it looked cleaner and healthier. But it looked lonely. It also looked lonely. See, this story is an extract from the book, Miguel Street, right? So that is why we don't know who George is. Once you will read the book, you will come to know. Right? George must also be a character in that book. So he had no more furniture than George's front room, but it looked cleaner and healthier. But it also looked lonely. So the furniture in the room of B. Wordsworth was not much, but it was cleaner and healthier, and there was some sadness, a kind of gloom was spread over in his room. Maybe because he was a lonely person, he didn't have a companion to live with, right? He lived all by himself. B. Wordsworth lived all by himself. So he was lonely. So that loneliness was very much obvious in the atmosphere of B. Wordsworth's house. One day I asked him, Mr. Wordsworth, why you does keep all this bush in your yard? And it does make the place damp. So the boy was inquisitive to know why Mr. Wordsworth has kept, he doesn't prune the trees and the plants in his garden, he doesn't cut the grass in his garden, and they have grown into a bush, all the trees and the plants, they are not growing properly. So it's a mess in his garden. So he just asked B. Wordsworth, the boy just asked B. Wordsworth, why you keep all this bush in your yard? It must be making the place damp. There must be a lot of dampness because of this. He said, listen, and I will tell you a story. So he gave his reason to a story. Once upon a time, a boy and a girl met each other and they fell in love. They loved each other so much they got married. They were both poets. He loved words, she loved grass and flowers and trees. They lived happily in a single room. And then one day, the little girl poet said to the boy poet. So he started narrating the story of a boy and a girl who were very much in love with each other. And then they got married. And one day, the girl poet, the boy poet was very fond of words, of writing poetry, and the girl poet was fond of grass and flowers and trees, and she was very much fond of plants. So they were living happily, they got married and they lived happily in a single room. What can you make out from this story? That he is narrating his own story, right? And then one day the girl poet said to the boy poet, we are going to have another poet in the family. So who was the another poet? Maybe baby was about to be born in the family. There was a new member about to be included in the family. But this poet was never there because the girl died. And the young poet died with her. So the girl died and a baby also died with her inside her. And the girl's husband was very sad. And he said he would never touch a thing in the girl's garden. And so the garden remained and grew high and wide. So that was the reason. This was the reason which he gave of not cutting the grass and the bushes in his garden. Now they are growing wildly because the girl, maybe his wife, was very much fond of the plants and the trees. So he decided that he will not touch anything in the girls' garden, and now they are growing wildly. I looked at B. Wordsworth, and as he told me this lovely story, he seemed to grow older. I understood his story. So the boy, see, in the beginning, we have been told that the boy was mature enough for his age, right? Rather too mature for his age. There is a word which has been used in the beginning of the story. It is precocious, right? Cautious means when you are more mature than your peers, or when your development is faster than your actual age. So the boy understood the story and he could relate to that story, right? And all of a sudden, the story was interesting. He liked the story which was narrated by B. Wordsworth. But all of a sudden, when the boy looked at B. Wordsworth's face, he seemed to grow old. He appeared to him quite old. He went for long walks together. Then that incident was over. They continued with their friendship and they continued spending time together. They used to go for long walks together. We went to the botanical gardens and the rock garden. We climbed Chancellor Hill in the late afternoon and watched the darkness fall on the port of Spain and watched the lights go on in the city and on the ships in the harbor. What the narrator is trying to say, that he started spending a lot of time with B. Wordsworth, right? They just used to roam from one place to another. They went to the botanical gardens, the rock gardens, the Chancellor Hills, they climbed. Then they watched the darkness, the port of Spain. And this way, they started spending considerable amount of time together and with each other. He did everything as though he was doing it for the first time in his life, right? So this was one of the facts why the boy was interested in his company, right? In spite of the fact that he was old, but just to maintain the curiosity and the interest of this young boy, that is the narrator, he did everything. See, the boy being young, he was not that experienced. There might be things which the boy was doing for the first time, but because the Wordsworth befriended the boy, he also did it in a manner as if he is also doing it for the first time. Right? He did everything as though he was doing it for the first time in his life. He did everything as he was doing some church right. Some church right means that he did everything with a lot of interest, with a everything very religiously, right? In a proper manner, right? He didn't hurry regarding doing anything. He was not in a, while doing anything, he was not in a mighty hurry to just complete it, or he never did anything very carelessly or in a very negligent manner. He did everything with a lot of interest, with a lot of curiosity, as if whatever he is doing for the first time. Though it was not possible that he was doing it for the first time because he was an old man and he must have done several things in the past. But just to maintain the interest and the curiosity of the boy, he did everything with as much interest as the person does when he is doing it for the first time. He would say to me, now how about having some ice cream? So this is how he used to talk to the boy. He would say to the boy, how about having some ice cream? And when I said yes, he would grow very serious and say, now which cafe shall we patronize? Patronize means when you go to buy goods or when you give business or service to something. So he said, then once the boy agreed to having ice cream, the next question would be, then now which cafe are we supposed to go? As though it were a very important thing. So that is what is the meaning of doing everything with some church right? That everything he did with a lot of attention, with a lot of interest. If you want to have ice cream, if any normal person wants to have ice cream, what he'll do, he'll go to any ice cream parlor, buy an ice cream and just have it. But B. Wordsworth was different. He will decide which ice cream shop, which cafe he is supposed to go to have ice cream. That also was something very important for him. He paid a lot of attention to every minute detail of anything. So even deciding the cafe to go for an ice cream, that also was something important for him, as though it were a very important thing. He would think for some time about it and finally say, I think I'll go and negotiate the purchase with that shop. So he would spend some time standing in front of the cafes and then deciding that which one should I go to buy the ice cream. And then after some deliberation, he will just decide, fix on one shop and then go tell the narrator that I would better go and buy it from this shop. The world became a most exciting place. And because B. Wordsworth was behaving like a young boy with the narrator, right? So the world became very exciting. Why are these small children not able to relate to the elder people? Why? Why do you think? Who can tell you? Why do these younger people don't want to spend time with the older people?
And because the course of their actions is very monotonous.
Yes, because that is what you call generation gap, right? Because what happens? The elder one is already experienced, right? So, because of the fact that you have done a particular thing several times in your life, obviously that will not be as interesting as to someone who is doing it for the first time. You will not be that curious or not curious at all. And because you have the experience of doing a particular thing, you know the pros and cons of doing it, the advantages and disadvantages of doing it. Then what happens as a result of it? You become didactic. You act more as a preacher to the younger one. The younger one has not done that particular act, has not done anything, doesn't have any idea about it, and without practically experiencing it and without actually doing it, if you are giving all the theoretical knowledge and the gyan which has thrown at you, right? That if you will do this, the repercussions of doing this will be this, right? So you should better do it. I am telling you out of experience what happens. The younger one loses interest. Yes or no? Right? So that is why, and then that is what we call as generation gap, right? Because they have their experience, they continuously go on teaching the younger people to behave in a particular manner, right? You're not supposed to act like this. The younger one, because the times have also changed, right? Then the person who is now old, when he was young, the situation was different, the time was different, everything was different, life was different. But based on his past experience, he is trying to teach someone who is young today and who is in an entirely different scenario. So that is the point when the clashes start and they start avoiding each other. That is why there is a very strong bond of friendship between B. Wordsworth and the narrator. Because B. Wordsworth behaved in a manner as if he's trying out everything for the first time. Right? The boy in reality was doing everything for the first time. Right? But the Wordsworth was not doing it for the first time. But still he behaved in a manner, he made the boy feel that he is also as much curious as the boy. Right? Every particular thing is as new to him as it is to the boy. So that feeling made their bond very strong. So that is why the world became a most exciting place. Okay. One day when I was in his yard, he said to me, I have a great secret which I'm now going to tell you. So one day when they were sitting together in the Wordsworth house in the yard, he wanted to reveal a secret to the boy. I said, it's really secret. So the boy wanted to confirm that whether it is a secret, and if it is a secret, then he's not supposed to reveal it to anyone else. At the moment, yes. So B. Wordsworth said that at this particular moment, yes, it is a secret and you're not supposed to tell it to anyone. I looked at him and he looked at me. He said, this is just between you and me. Remember, I'm writing a book. So see, once you tell a young boy that I have a secret to tell you, forget about the young boy, you tell this to anyone. I have a secret to tell you, right? I want to share a secret with you. What happened? All of a sudden, you become very interested in the other person's story, right? Because the word secret is very interesting, right? All your interest, all your attention will shift to the person who is talking. I looked at him and he looked at me. He said, it's just between you and me. Now you're not supposed to reveal this to anyone. And what was the secret? I am writing a poem. So how will the boy feel? Oh, I was disappointed. He shifted all his interest to what was coming up, to what B. Wordsworth was about to say. But then what did B. Wordsworth say? That I am writing a poem. So will the boy find it interesting? No. He said, oh, this is the secret. So he became disappointed because he expected something more interesting from B. Wordsworth. But this is what he said. But this is a different sort of poem. This is the greatest poem in the world. So he said, the poem which I am writing is quite different. It is not like any other normal poem. It is a very different poem from the rest of the world. Why? Because I am writing the greatest poem in the world. I listened. So then the boy listened, means he found it interesting. He said, I've been working on it for more than 25 years now. I will finish it in about 22 years from now. That is, if I keep writing at the present rate. If I continue with the present pace, with the present speed, then I'll be able to finish it in 22 years. I'll take 22 years more to finish the poem. And I have been writing from the past 25 years. You does write a lot then. So the next question which popped up immediately in the boy's head was that, then in that case, if you're writing such a long poem that you have been writing for the past 25 years and still you will take 22 years more to complete your poem, then you definitely write a lot. He said, not anymore. I just write one line a month, but I make sure that it is a good line. So he said that no, I don't write much anymore. Earlier I used to write much, but now I don't write. I just write one line a month, but I make sure that the one line which I am writing, that is a good one. I asked, what was the last month's good line? So then the boy asked, what was the line which he wrote last month? He looked up at the sky and said, the past is true. So this is the line which he wrote last month, that past is true. I said, it's a beautiful line. B. Wordsworth said, I hope to distill the experience of the whole month into a single line of poetry. So in 22 years, I shall have written a poem that will sing all humanity. So that is why he was able to just write one line a month, because he used to distill, he used to write the crux of the experience of the entire month in one single line of that poetry. And he was expecting that within the next 22 years, he will be able to write in general about all humanity. Everything which is possible with humanity, with human beings, he will be able to write the crux of it in his poem. I was filled with wonder. So this statement amazed the boy. He was wonderstruck when he heard it. Our walks continued. We walked along the seawall at Dockside one day, and I said, Mr. Wordsworth, if I drop this pin in the water, you think it will float? So then one day while they were walking along the seawall at Dockside, next to the water they were walking, And then the boy asked Mr. Wordsworth that what will happen? What do you think, Mr. Wordsworth? If I drop this pin, will it sink or will it float? He said, see, being an old man, he must have known the answer of this fact. But he didn't give the answer to the boy. Why? Because he didn't want to spoil the curiosity and the interest of the boy. So what was his reply? He said, this is a strange world. Drop your pen and let us see what will happen. So he said, this is a strange world. Anything is possible in this world. So you should better try it. You drop the pin and see for yourself what happens, whether it sinks or whether it floats. The pin sank. I said, how is the poem this month? So the boy dropped the pen and the pen sank. So that is how B. Wordsworth behaved with the boy. Right? And that is the reason why the boy enjoyed the company of B. Wordsworth. Right? I said, how is the poem this month? And then the boy asked, how is the poem this month? Means what did you write this month? Or what was the line of this month? But he never told me any other line. He merely said, oh, it comes, it comes. So after that, he only told him about one single line, and that was the past speed. After that, he didn't tell anything about the poem to the boy. He only said, whenever the boy used to ask, he only said that it comes automatically, comes on its own. Sorry. Or we would sit on the seawall and watch the liners come into the pond. So what they used to do, they used to sit on the seawall, that is the land which was next to the sea. They used to sit there and watch the liners. What are the liners? The liners are the ship, right? It used to transport people, right? Normally the ships which, the connecting ships you can say, right? For a long journey, these liners, they used to connect from one port to another. They used to transport people from one port to another, right? So these were the liners. But of the greatest poem, in the world, I heard Homer. I felt he was going older. So, but they continued spending time with each other. They continued enjoying different things. They continued sitting on the seawall, looking at the ships, looking at the stars, everything else they continued. But B. Wordsworth never talked about his poem again. Slowly, what happened? The boy started feeling that now B. Wordsworth is going old. How you does live, Mr. Wordsworth? I asked him one day. He said, you mean how I get money? So one day the boy asked B. Wordsworth, how do you live? Means what do you do for your earning? What do you do for a living? Right? How do you earn your money? So this is the question which the boy asked Mr. Wordsworth, and he said, you mean to say that how do I earn my living? Then I nodded. So the boy nodded in yes. He laughed in a crooked way. Crooked way means in a very dishonest kind of a smile, right? In a very strange, dishonest manner, he smiled. And he said, I sing calypsos in the calypso season. So this is how we used to, B. Wordsworth used to make a living by singing calypsos. I have already told you what are calypsos, right? They are the songs which were sung by the people in the Caribbean, right? So he said that I sing calypsos in the calypso season, and that lasts you the rest of the year. So boy said that, see, calypsos are sung by the calypsonians for a particular period of time, right? Whenever it's their festive season, then they go around singing songs. But that is not a permanent thing. That is not a permanent business, right? A permanent profession. It happens only for a certain time period during the year, and that lasts you the rest of the year. So the boy wanted to know that whether that is enough to support him for the rest of the year, because that is not a continuous profession. You cannot make a living all the year round from that. So B. Wordsworth replied, it is enough. B. Wordsworth said that yes, it is enough for me to support for the entire year. But you will be the richest man in the world when you write the greatest poetry. He didn't reply. Okay? Boy said, but don't worry, when you write your poetry, when your poem is published, you will become the richest man in the world because you are writing the greatest poem. He didn't reply. Wordsworth didn't see anything. Maybe he's trying to come to terms with reality. Right? See, he was living in a world of his own, I told you, right? But he talked about his greatest poem only once to the boy. From the second time, the third time, whenever the boy used to raise the topic of his greatest poem, he didn't say anything about it. He made attempts to change the topic. Right? He didn't tell the boy anything about his poem. And then the writer has stressed this particular point that he was growing older. Right? So as you grow old and you become more experienced, you come to terms with reality. So this was happening to this poet who was kind of a failure in this world. Right? We know that he was not a very successful poet. Though there was a pun in his name, he has compared himself to one of the greatest poets of the world, that is William Wordsworth, but he was not able to be a successful poet because nobody buys his poetry. We have been told in the story. One day when I went to see him in his little house, I found him lying on his little bed. He looked so old and so weak that I found myself wondering. So his condition was not okay, and because the boy was very much emotionally connected to B. Wordsworth, on looking at the pathetic condition of B. Wordsworth, he looked old, he looked weak, right? He looked sick. So the boy couldn't stop his tears from rolling down his eye. So he had a very strong urge to cry the moment he saw B. Wordsworth in that way. He said, the poem is not going well. So B. Wordsworth told the boy that the poem is not going well. The poem which I was writing was not going well. He wasn't looking at me. So B. Wordsworth was able to understand the feelings of the boy. He was an affectionate man. Whatever we come to know from this story till now is that he was an affectionate man. He loved the boy. He cared for the boy. Right? For the narrator. So he was looking through the window at the coconut tree. So he wanted to avoid that eye contact. See, once you have a very strong connection, emotional connection with someone, you don't need words to express how you are feeling. Right? So they shared that kind of thing. So he wanted to avoid that eye contact with the boy. And so what did B. Wordsworth do? He started looking through the window at the coconut tree, which was in his yard. And he was speaking as though I wasn't there. So though the boy was present, though the narrator was present in his room, but B. Wordsworth was not looking at the boy, not looking at the narrator. Instead, he was looking out of the window at the coconut tree and was talking, as if the boy was not living. What do we normally do? If we have one along with us in a particular place, we look and we are talking to that person, we look at that person. But B. Wordsworth was not doing that. He was looking at the coconut tree and he was speaking. He was speaking as though I wasn't there. He said, when I was 20, I felt the power within myself. Then, almost in front of my eyes, I could see his face growing older and more tired. So, what can you make out from this? That he slowly, B. Wordsworth has become aware of his imminent death, the death which is approaching. Right? B. Wordsworth has realized that his end is near, his end is approaching, and he is about to die. And that was clearly visible on his face. And because the boy was very much connected to B. Wordsworth, he was also somehow able to understand this fact. Right? So then almost in front of my eyes, I could see his face growing older and more tired. He said, but that was a long time ago. So he was telling the boy that when I was 20 years of age, I felt very energetic. I felt very young. But then that was long ago. Now I don't have that energy. Now I don't have that stamina. And then I felt it so keenly. It was as though I had been slapped by my mother. Then, when the boy looked at the Wordsworth's face, he could clearly feel the pain. He could clearly feel the pinch inside him. Right? He had the same sensation which he had when he was slapped by his mother. Right? Slapping causes pain. So he had that kind of feeling whenever, which he had when he was slapped by his mother. Means there was something inside him which was causing pain to the boy. And so that is why he was crying. I could see it clearly on his face. It was there for everyone to see. Death on the shrinking face. So death, the approaching death, the imminent death was clearly visible on B. Wordsworth's face, and the boy could make this out. The boy understood this. He looked at me and saw my tears and sighed. B. Wordsworth saw this, that the boy is crying, and he sat upon his bed. He said, come. I went and sat on his knee. So, couldn't see the boy crying, so he called the boy, right, and asked him to come be with me. He looked into my eyes and he said, oh, you can see it too. I always knew you have the poet's eye. See, I told you that the poets, they have very keen observation, right? They have to be very sensitive to the surroundings to write poems. An insensitive person cannot be a good poet because he will not feel anything. And if he will not feel anything, he will not be able to express anything. So all the artists are very sensitive. So he said, he looked into my eyes. B. Wordsworth called the boy near him, and then he looked into the boy's eyes and he said, so you also have understood. Understood what? Understood that I am going to die. And he said that always know you have the poet's eyes. That now I'm telling you, I've been always telling you that there is a poet inside you, and so that is why you were able to see it. You recognized it clearly on my face. He didn't even look sad, and that made me burst out crying. And B. Wordsworth was not even sad of his approaching death. There was not an iota of a gloom on his face. So this made the boy even more sad, and he started crying loudly. He was not able to contain his emotions, and he burst into tears. He pulled me to his thin chest and said, so Wordsworth pulled the boy to his chest, wanted to calm down the boy, and then he said, do you want me to tell you a funny story? And he smiled encouragingly. So he said, because you are crying, I'm going to tell you a funny story. You want me to tell you a funny story? But the boy was like not in control of his emotions, and he didn't reply. See, once you are crying bitterly, right? Once you are crying too much, it becomes very difficult for you to speak. Right? You find difficulty in speaking, and so was the case with the boy. He was crying bitterly, and so he was not able to reply to the Wordsworth's question. That, do you want me to tell you a funny story? He didn't reply anything because he was crying. He said, when I have finished the story, I want you to promise that you will go away and never come back to see me. Do you promise? So then B. Wordsworth asked the boy that once my story is finished, I'm going to tell you a funny story, and once my story ends, you will have to promise me that you will go away from this place and never come back to this place again. Do you promise this? I nodded. The boy nodded and he said, yes, I promise you. See, why did B. Wordsworth ask the boy to promise this? Because he loved the boy and he didn't want the boy to be in pain. He didn't want to die in front of the boy. Right? He has spent some great time with the boy. Right? And now dying in front of the boy will make the boy sad. So that is why he asked the boy to go from that place and never come back again once his story ends. I nodded. Boy nodded. He said, good. Well, listen. That story I told you about the boy poet and the girl poet, do you remember that? That wasn't. So now what he is trying to do, he's trying to tell the boy that everything which I have told you is an illusion, is not the reality. So this last story which this person B. Wordsworth tells the boy is to make the boy or to enable the boy to come to terms with the reality. Because B. Wordsworth has spent his entire life living in an illusion and he doesn't want the boy to do the same. He wants the boy to come in contact with the real world. So that is why he's telling the boy at the point of time when he's about to die. Right? So that the boy is able to adjust with the real world and not spend his life like he was. Right? So that is why he says that everything which I've told you about the story which I told you about the boy poet and the girl poet, that wasn't true. That was just lie. It was something I just made up. I just concocted it. I just framed the entire story. There was no reality in it. All this talk about poetry and the greatest poem in the world, that wasn't true either. So to this poem, the person B. Wordsworth is making an attempt to make the boy come to terms with reality. He said he is kind of telling the boy that everything in all these days which I have told you, that is not true. These things are far away from the reality. Right? All this talk about poetry and the greatest poem in this world, that wasn't true either. Isn't that the funniest thing you have heard? So then he asked the boy, isn't that the funniest thing? But his voice broke. But his voice broke was means that the Wordsworth was also not able to contain his emotions. Right? He also was overwhelmed with his emotion, and once you want to cry and you have to like control your tears, what happens? Your voice breaks. So his voice broke. I left the house and ran home crying like a poet for everything I saw. So now the boy was also a poet. He ran home, and now he has become very sensitive, and so he ran the home. He ran towards his home while crying like a poet. As the poet was defined by Wordsworth, that a poet needs to be very sensitive, needs to be a good observer. So the boy felt for the first time that now he is also a poet because he's crying like a poet. You remember? B. Wordsworth told him that he can cry while looking at the morning glory. A poet can cry over anything. Crying means what? Crying means being sensitive. Crying means being emotional, right? So poets are emotional and sensitive people. So that is why a poet can look at anything and cry. So now when the boy was crying, this was the first time that he actually felt like a poet who can cry for everything he saw. I walked along the Alberto Street a year later, but I could find no sign of the poet's house. So the poet's house was missing. It hadn't vanished just like that. So the house didn't vanish, didn't disappear just like that. It had been pulled down and a big two-storied building had taken its place. So the house, which was an example of the natural beauty, you remember, there were so many trees and plants growing in his house. That has disappeared and now its place was taken by a two-storied building. The mango tree and the plum tree and the coconut tree had all been cut down, and there was brick and concrete everywhere. Now Only brick and concrete was to be found. See, brick and concrete is the reality. Trees and plants, they are the example of imagination. They are the example of connection to the nature. So when P. Wordsworth was missing, the reality of the world occupied his field. It was just as though P. Wordsworth had never existed. So after 1 year, when the narrator visited the house, he had a feeling the place seemed to be changed so much that P. Wordsworth had never lived in that place. There was no connection of that particular place in the present day with the past. It was completely transformed. There was complete transformation of the place, and it seemed to the narrator as if B. Wordsworth was not a reality. He didn't exist. See, B. Wordsworth pretended to be working on the greatest poem in the world, but he was actually not able to produce any result. Right? So what does it mean? He said that he has been writing a poem from the past 25 years and he will take 22 years more. And then when he was growing older and he realized that he's about to die, and whenever the boy brought up the topic of his greatest poem, he tried to change the subject. This means that he was not a successful poet. He was living in the illusion of being a greatest poet. Right? He was living in the illusion of producing some great work, but he was not able to do it. Right? There was always a clash between his imagination, his illusion, and the reality. The world in which he was living, in which B. Wordsworth was living, was not the real world. And as he approaches his death, right, when he is about to die, what happens? His death sets him free from his world of illusion, and so that is why he breaks the illusion of the boy also. Because he doesn't want the boy, the narrator, to live in the illusion which has been created by him. Because when he is approaching death, he is coming to terms with reality. So he acquaints the boy also to the reality. Right? And so that is why the Wordsworth's death seems to be as if he never existed. Because his entire life was an illusion, far away from reality. Right? He was an escapist also. Right? What is an escapism? Escapism is when you divert your mind, right, to some imaginative thing because you don't want to face the reality. You don't want to face the problems of your real life. You don't want to face the difficulties of your real life. You know the story which was told to him. He didn't want to face the problems of being alone, right? His wife was dead. He was lonely. So that is why he was doing all these things, because he didn't want to face the pain of reality. So he started diverting his mind towards this imaginative world, just to keep himself entertained. Right? And in the end, what happens? He becomes conscious. He becomes conscious of this fact that he had a very stagnant life. He has actually not done anything. Right? He has led a stagnant life. His nature was a stagnant, and because he realizes this, that he has not done anything worthwhile in his life, so this realization makes him shatter the boy's illusion. First, he's the creator of that illusion in the boy's mind. You remember the first day, he tells him that you are also a poet. By saying this, he's creating an illusion in the boy's mind. And then when his end approaches, he's about to die, then he is the one who shatters that illusion. Why? Because he has himself become conscious of the stagnant thing. This is a stagnant life. and he doesn't want the boy also to lead a life like him. Right? And so he confesses that everything he told him was imaginary, was far away from reality. And now, by telling all these things, he wants the boy to discover the reality. And that is why he asked the boy to never come back to that place. Because his existence is illusionary. It's just an illusion. So he forces the boy to walk out of this illusion and face the real world by shattering.
Ma'am, it's
This
almost the time now.
Yes, it's almost time, and the story has also come to an end. Thank you. If you want to ask anything, you can ask.